Like if you look at it technically, right, like you could call everyone a pro MMA fighter because if you haven't fought, technically your record is 0-0. Yeah, but I suppose it depends how serious you are and what your aspirations, I guess. Because there's some like pro MMA fighters who maybe they just fight a couple of fights and then just use it for the namesake. Like, oh, I fought before, so I'm marketable. I can sell, say, training, coaching packages or whatever. But for me, I think it's more of for almost more than half my life, it's been like quite a big ambition for me. As a pro MMA fighter, I think my end goal is I'm not sure if you know, but just to kind of touch on it, my end goal is actually to be in the UFC and hopefully be a world champion someday. But with that comes actually pro MMA fighters, right? It's not really just all about the fighting. It's kind of mundane in the sense that most of the time you're just, especially as an unsigned athlete, so I haven't signed like a long-term contract with big promotions, right? But a lot of it is just kind of being on standby, just training day to day, hoping that like the opportunity comes along. So it's a lot of being like a freelance, like part-timer kind of thing, just looking out for jobs. But yeah, so yeah, I guess that's about it. I guess mostly training and just day to day activities.
Because I think that we all have this romanticized idea of like being in the sports, being in the arts, right? And it is also, and I think MMA and combat sports in general seems to have like a romantic idea about like what is it like to be a combat sports athlete, right? And you're like just going down to the mats and just keep training, right? You just punch the bag, you just keep training. Instagram is not helping with that romantic idea as well. And there's this one thing that annoys me because there are also people who are doing that and they didn't realize that some of them need a job as well. You can't train with an empty stomach. Yeah, even if you don't have a family, even if you don't have a girlfriend. So it's like, because they all look at Conor McGregor. Yeah, so it's like, oh my god, how does one do that? How does one, like, it's just romantic.
I think the general idea of football MMA fighters is always starts from the top, right? They look at the biggest athletes in the world and expect everybody to be like that. But they're the biggest athletes in the world. Obviously, their pay and their life and all the things they do is very different from somebody who's starting out. It's like looking at somebody in a high-ranking corporate position and imagining that the guy at the bottom who just started the entry job is working exactly the same. But that's definitely not true. Like it seems obvious in that sense, but to some, like, they think pro MMA fighter equals just fighting, but actually no, it's quite difficult to make money from fighting alone. And like you said, actually most of us have like full-time jobs, and it's quite a struggle in the sense where you have to balance training and keeping yourself alive, because sometimes there's opportunity cost for either, right? Either you opt to work a little bit more, but that means you won't improve as much as a competitive athlete, and the other way around also, you can put all your efforts into investing, right? All your efforts into being the best athlete you can be, but then you don't know how to pay for your next meal.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I think that's the problem with sports and arts in general, not just even if it's a Singapore financial sense as well. It's like it doesn't make sense and I think that's why a lot of people are generally very scared of like moving into like sports, because like it doesn't make sense for. I told you, I think we were talking just now, and I remember like telling you like, oh, a lot of us need, or at least for me, I need a tangible goal when it comes to training, right? So it sometimes just doesn't make sense for me to plunge in full time. But is it easier if you start? Yeah, because I read that you started very young, 16, 15, yeah.
Easier in the sense that I suppose you have a longer time for learning and developing skills. You don't feel like your clock is as short, because like some people, they start like maybe like mid adulthood or like even like closer to their 30s, and then when we're talking about like a full-time career in fighting, then they have a very big. It's less likely that they will dive into it because they feel like, oh, I'm already at a certain age. It's more difficult for me to continue on. But actually, I would say the same thing applies to somebody like me who started very young, because I feel like people who start at that age, they always meet a crossroads. And for male athletes, usually it's NS, or even for like female athletes, it's also around that time. So like maybe like early 20s, yeah. Because even then, you have to decide, like, do you dive fully into this, or do you go the we call it like the conventional way, get a regular job, work standard hours, and then. But that being said, like if you go that way, you have to give this up because there's no way you can balance both. So in terms of choosing a full-time profession, I would say honestly, it's about the same. Yeah, you still have a lot of things to factor in.
Here's this thing, right? You have walked through that path. The decision of you turning pro, or doing this full-time training, and then coaching, and then become a fighter. Is it more obvious for you because you started at 16 and 15? Because for me, I would say if I'm not going to do that, but if I would turn pro, it will make more sense for me at the age of 16, 15. If I started out my martial arts at 15, 16, say 30, because 30 years old, your profile doesn't make sense, right? It's not long enough. It's halfway there, right? If you want to turn pro, I would say by 30 years old, you would have at least a pro fight on a conventional timeline. If I'm 16 years old, it's more obvious that, okay, oh yeah, maybe I can do this. I still have hope.
I would say if you put it that way, then it's more obvious because, like, the younger you are, the more risks you can take, right? In a sense, yeah. But I suppose as I was saying earlier, like the considerations would be like, if you go either way, right? Whether you start at 16 or start at 30, and if you really dive like head first, like full on into it, then it will definitely impact the rest of your life. But being 16, even if it doesn't work out, you still have some kind of buffer time to switch to something more stable, So I guess to answer your question, that kind of made it more clear cut for me. But my main consideration was actually along with my educational path, because the time I started was just before I entered university as well, and then I was deciding between the more traditional degrees such as like business or accounting, along those lines, versus sports science and management, which only one of the universities had. So I knew, like, if I really wanted to go full in, I have to choose between the two. So that kind of made the decision a bit more difficult also, because then, like, because uni, even though it's subsidized, it's still not very cheap, So yeah, so I guess that was another big factor in it.
So here's this thing: how monotonous is sports science? Because we talk about being sports science and management, like how it sounds cool, but how monotonous it is, like, compare, like, because it feels like there's a lot of science in it. There's a lot of like math in it.
Mostly like science, I suppose. Not too much on the calculations aspect. Maybe a little bit in like biomechanics and stuff. But actually, it's especially for an athlete, it wasn't too monotonous. I quite enjoyed my degree actually, because like being invested in the sport, right, you can kind of identify how whatever you're learning translates to like real world scenarios, like in your sport, in other sports, and how they will be beneficial. But I will say the stuff I learned in my degree is a little bit more surface level. I feel like if I really were to apply some of the topics, I still have to further my studies.
But it all makes sense, right? Like moving into like, oh, okay, finally I can use this in say in a grappling sense. Like it makes more sense. Did I suppose like did it okay? How much is translate into like into your sports into say BJJ?
So I wouldn't say like it's not like so direct in a sense where I learned this in my sports science degree, then I can immediately use it to improve my BJJ technique, for example, or even like boxing technique, right? Because like you train boxing yourself, a lot of the things we learn are very arbitrary. Like there's no syllabus. Not say no syllabus, but like it's not very fixed. It's like you can do the same thing like 1,000 different ways, and it's just how you kind of piece it together, right? So, like sports science would, for example, I use Ju Jitsu a lot because the movements are like you can break it down to simple and complex movements, right? Like pushing a hand, or to make it more complex, like maybe running past somebody's legs, for example. And then you can using sports science, you could understand say the leverage of like using leverages to make to have better control over somebody. Yeah, I would say that's one of the ways. And of course, the strength and conditioning aspect of it, which is also part of the syllabus, so that one you can kind of understand what you need to prime your body better for competition and training and injury prevention and stuff like that.
I'm going to change gear a little bit, right? I would like to know more about you.
Okay.
Like how did you grow up? Who you are as a kid? How do you choose your first combat sports? So because I know you did boxing, you did legend sparring.
Oh yes, I did. Yeah. 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah. So okay, so like I want to know you as a kid. What kind of kid you are in school? Like, are you the loud kid, or are you the quiet kid? Are you the kid that sit at the back? Or who you are in school? Like, if I were to put you in I'm not so sure whether you're still in there. If I were to put you in the 90s teenage movie, or maybe in a movie like Riverdale, which character would you be?
You mean the series?
Yeah, the series.
Okay, I can't remember Riverdale from the Archie comics more. Because I felt that it was a bit dark, you know.
Yeah.
But okay, if we reference the comics, I would say probably like a jughead, I guess.
Oh, the clown.
Yeah, the clown, kind of. Well, my when I was younger, it was kind of ironic in a sense where I would be kind of playful and joker, but I also had kind of a bad temper. Yeah. Like sometimes when I get like my nickname that my family used to give me was like sulky, like the sulk, because every time like when I got mad, I just like give a really angry face, like, and then keep quiet, you know. Yeah, but beyond that, I thought I was quite playful. I was very energetic. I used to play a lot of sports. So before I did combat sports, I was I played soccer all throughout up till secondary school, I think.
But what was the transition though, like soccer to combat sports?
So that's a funny thing. So actually, me being in MMA is the direct result of me being a younger brother. Because me and my brother we're like very close now, but he also just got married last weekend, so very happy. But when we were younger, we would fight all the time, and out of 100, let's say out of 100 fights, right, I would lose 101 of them. He was my older brother, so he always. And I think, funnily enough, right, that toughened me up a lot. But like the direct part comes when so I think we were in secondary school. Yeah, probably secondary school also. Then one day we just went to the fitness corner down below my house. Then he's like, "Hey, come, I want to show you something." Then he started grappling with me. I had no idea what was going on. Like what he's trying to do is like trying to like, because before that my only reference was WWE. So I thought it was something like that. Then somehow or another I ended up like spraining my neck, and like I was stuck in one position like that for like a whole day. Then I asked him, so I was like, hey, what was all that doing? So he showed me some MMA videos,
Mm.
and he was just like, wow, this looks damn cool. Then I remember one thing he said to me that stuck up till today was like, yeah, I always wondered what it'd be like to fight in a cage, you know. Then I was like,
Is it like a UFC fight?
yes, UFC fight. So one of the it's quite like old for somebody who, as in, sorry, it's quite recent for somebody who's seen the sport for a long time. But one of my first few like impressions of the UFC was watching a lot of John Jones fights. So he's one of the favorite fighters that me and my brother like a lot. And he's coming back next month. I'm not sure if you follow UFC, but
I know that he's coming back. But I don't. I've always followed UFC on and off. I know UFC before. I feel like a hipster now, but but I know UFC quite early. But I've heard of his name, but I've never like really invested into like UFC a lot, because it feels like this is one thing about me with sports, where when it feels too scattered, you don't know what to follow. Yeah, so I remember like John Jones, and I remember the Gracie guys.
The OG.
Yeah, the OG guys. Yeah. But then again, I was like, again, it's on and off and on and off. Then so to me it's like a crazy thing to see people who are invested in UFC and stuff like that. So I don't know where I'm going with this. Okay, so do you remember which fight was that? Is that John Jones?
I think it was either against Rampage Jackson or Lyoto Machida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and both of them he just completely obliterated them. Wow, this looks damn sick, you know. And you know, at that age, as a teenage boy, you have a lot of testosterone, so you kind of always want to prove yourself, try to be physical with people. So I kind of got into it. So after that one day, then we kind of had our own void deck training session. Like we have no idea what we're doing, but we're just trying to copy them. Yeah. Then after a while, one of his friends was like, "Hey, you wanna go join a gym?" So I was like, "Yeah, sure. I don't mind. Let's go try it out." So I went there for a month, and it was like the first time I went, I was like, it was super intimidating, you know. 'Cause, you know, like, wow, it's a fight gym. You don't know anything.
Which gym?
It was Juggernaut.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is it the one in the one where it was still in
Boat Key?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was their first outlet. Yeah. So this was way back in the first, like, the month that I joined was, I think, 2012 or 2013.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I joined for a month, and this was during the December holidays, and I loved it. I was just like really like enjoying going to all the different classes and stuff. Because I was like, oh, finally I learned how to do this without like just anyhow going through it. You know. This is really fun also. And it was a good workout also, for sure. So that part of it was like damn sure. So after that, I think I was Sec 3, the end of Sec 3, and then the following entire year I saved up for after O levels, and then I signed up for a membership back at Juggernaut, and then as they say, the rest is history. I just never stopped from there. Yeah.
Do you switch gym along the way?
Yes, I did, because so Juggernaut was where I met my current coach actually, so major overall, and so I was training under him for MMA the most of the whole time I was there, and then after a couple of years, I went to I enlisted in NS, and while I was in NS, he opened his own gym, so after NS I hopped over to his gym, and then so since.
How is he like as a person?
He's very awkward. Super awkward. But he's
Is it the same with most MMA guys?
I think it's a very broad spectrum actually, but the common consensus I've seen is like, when people think of MMA fighters, they're like, oh, this guy's scary. You don't want to mess with him. No, actually, I think good 90% of them are very silly. Yeah, they really they're kind of goofy, just like do normal, regular people stuff, you know, joke around and be very, very comfortable with themselves, I would say. But it's funny because he's just his mannerisms are awkward, but he's actually a very like friendly person. And as a coach and mentor, I mean, he's been with me since like day one. So I would say he's definitely the best coach out there for sure. He's actually also a very intelligent person. Yeah, I would say. So like another common conception with combat sports, right, is just like go in, get violent. Yeah, but it's not. It's actually he has a very methodical approach to things, and he really takes the time to study different techniques and watch like old fights to see what he can pick from that. Yeah.
How much old fights do you watch then? Like because my favorite fighters are usually the older guys as well. Like, because it's raw, it's more raw in the sense where you can see how certain punches makes more sense. At least that's for boxing, because coming from that background. So how often do you break down older fights as well?
Yes and no, but before I get into that, right, so actually there's a very big distinction between like older fights in boxing versus older fights in MMA, because I think boxing has been around way longer. So if you see fights from like 20, 30 years ago in boxing, right, those guys probably can still stand a good chance against the guys of today. Like all things considered, if you were to plug them from the era and put them against them now, I think it might be an even fight. Right, but for MMA, because the sport only started 1990 something, and it has evolved so much, right, that the techniques used from then, or the fighters then, right, is the odds of them beating somebody from this era, right, is very, very low,
because of the different rules.
Not the different. It's just the evolution of like technique. Honestly, like how the game is played. To provide an example, like 10-20 years ago, the meta was like, okay, I'll do some striking, I'll do some Ju Jitsu, and then I put it together, and then I go fight. But now MMA is as a whole, so there's almost no distinction between the striking, the wrestling, and the grappling, because all of them kind of flow together. And then there's a lot more career athletes. Sorry, not career athletes. Like almost lifelong athletes. Like even myself, is could be considered almost a lifelong athlete because I started right before my adulthood. And the amount of time and training, it just sharpens your body to be able to do a lot more things, and everything is a lot more scientific now. Back then, when the guys started out, they almost all of them were like kind of like tough guys who wanted to prove themselves, so they hopped into the sport. There wasn't much like, not calling them stupid, but there wasn't as much like intelligent structure towards like training and learning.
I think it's also because they don't know what they're doing.
In a way, yeah. So like go in, brawl it out, that kind of thing.
I think it's more like when you first start out fighting. I think it's when you first started out boxing, your first sparring match, you don't know what to do. You either run away or you just hit it out. Yeah. And now you're mixing all the combat sports with all together, right? So you have like karate versus. I remember watching the sumo wrestler with a karate guy, the first UFC.
Oh yeah.
So like it just doesn't make sense when you have because the sumo wrestler doesn't know the other guy what is he trying to do, and the other guy was like, okay, let's do striking. If I did not remember wrongly, it's been a while.
I guess the mindset last time it was more like they were trying to make a spectacle or like a freak show kind of thing almost, whereas now it's more of a like proper sport.
Have you ever tried to break down to those who are not initiated, in a sense of those who does not go to the gym, like because you're like, okay, look, there's this two guys that's fighting right now in UFC, and you know their energy, and you know where they're going with their matches, right? And then you're like, okay, let's sit down and watch MMA, and maybe you have a friend who just go, hey, I know you do MMA, right? Let's watch MMA and get together and just try to break down, and you're like sitting there and you try to break down the fight, but you see a lot of guys are just going circles.
Oh, actually, like you happen to come across a fight that's nothing is happening.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like I would say, who's that guy, the kickboxer who did really, really well?
Adesanya?
Sanya and the one before that, before his last fight.
Adesanya versus Jared Kennedy.
I think so. Where it gets slightly boring in a sense where it looks boring because as an outsider, because you don't know what is happening. But if you know the fight, if you're in the fight itself, it feels like it's okay. It makes more sense. Have you ever tried to break down those kind of fights with a friend?
Yes,
like
half the time they'll be like, hey, what's something? Like, boring lah. It's always like too extreme. Either they're boring or like if something is very exciting, right? Then they'll just be like, yeah, just watch the violence. Whatever, you know. But to answer your question, yes, I have, I guess. But the answer is simpler than you think. When boring fights like that happen, usually it's just stylistic differences, you know. So like maybe both of them are counter strikers, right? So they both are the type that counter strikers are the type that like they don't want to make the first move. They want you to try and make the first move so they can capitalize on your mistake. But when two people don't want to make the first move, then
it makes no sense for them to fight.
Exactly. So sometimes it's just like that.
But do you so this is what happens, right? If because again we are looking when we are looking at a match, or when people are looking at a match, you either go for like this is a match where we want to see blood, and this is a match where and there's a group of guys who like you will be like watching like full breakdown, right? Is it I will not say translatable, but in a sense because you don't gel well with each other, right? Because I think if there's two groups watching, the two groups will look at a very different objective in terms of when you do a breakdown of that fight, right? Do people ask you questions in a sense where I want to phrase this question properly, but I do not know how to phrase it properly. So it's more like, if they ask you questions, right? Would you want that? What kind of fight would okay? Let me change the question totally. If someone who wants to try to watch a fight, which fight would you recommend, or which fight would you like the first step that is like, okay, look, this is what MMA looks like.
Well, even that there's very different levels to it. So from an entertainment perspective, right, I will give them the bloodiest and most violent fights. Sometimes it's just two guys just swinging it out. So that one for the entertainment value, definitely. But if it was for more like looking at it as sporting / educational, like trying to learn more about the sport, I wouldn't say a specific fight, but there's a few fighters who are very cerebral. So they are very intelligent and smart about the techniques they use and reading their opponent and stuff like that. So like some examples would be Demetrius Johnson.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So that guy is, I think, one of the best of all time, because like you see the way he approaches fights and how he fights, right? He's always one step ahead. So somebody like that, or in more recent terms, like Alex Volkanovski. He just fought recently. He's another guy that is capable of doing everything, and he does it in such a methodical way that if you were to watch and like, oh, see, he's trying to set this up, he's trying to set that up, then you can definitely kind of explain to somebody about stuff like that. Or sorry, even on that topic, John Jones. John Jones.
Here's this next question: Do you go into like a specific sports? So this just happens to me like a couple of like last month, or a couple of months ago, where I remember going into a Muay Thai gym with a boxing way of like thinking. So do you go into and I saw two people sparring, two Muay Thai fighters sparring. So do you use or what time do you go to other people's gym? And when they see us sparring, just try to picture yourself in there and see how you would do it. Do I make sense?
As in, do I go to like other gyms and
No, like you don't challenge them, but when you look at two people sparring, right? Would you and like how would you analyze a fight then? How would you analyze a sparring then?
So I think it's kind of similar to the previous topic of conversation, but if it's smaller scale like this, right, I would probably put myself in their shoes and think about how I would react to certain things, and then point out maybe some of the tendencies or mistakes that one or the other are like because everybody got tendencies when they move and stuff like that. So I suppose I would try to notice that as it's happening in real time. So that was some of the things I would look out for in a sparring / even competition.
Okay. Now I'm going to move into a little bit more personal. I'm going in and out, Okay. So I want to ask you, right? You have a brother? You have two?
One older brother. Yeah.
One older brother. Okay. So how is it like growing up then with a brother who is also in MMA?
Actually,
in a combat sports.
He tried it a little bit, but he didn't really get into it full on.
Okay.
Yeah, so he ended up he's doing mostly bodybuilding now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, I would say he's even then he's a huge influence in my life. So he you always look up to your older brother.
Yeah.
So when he said what he said earlier, I was like, shit, I think I also have that same curiosity or interest in it, And then to have for the growing part to have a very physical and even more hot-headed older brother. Most of the time, like I said, he's just getting beaten up. But it was a strange way for us to bond, I would say. But it really grew my passion towards this kind of combat sports and martial arts, and that being said, like on top of that, ever since I started, he's been my biggest supporter, and that just gives me more motivation to push harder and try to do better.
How then? What about do you come from a very sports-based family, or do you?
So my parents are not like career athletes or anything, but they both did quite a lot of sports in their youth. I wouldn't. But my dad made us start with like soccer because he played soccer last time from like a very young age. So I suppose that helped to develop my body to be more, to have more like physical capabilities and better stamina throughout. Yeah, and then but I suppose sports in my family was always more of a hobby rather than a serious thing, until I came along.
This is a question I'll ask every combat sports guys as well, or every athlete as well. There'll be one day you need to hang your gloves. There'll be one day you need to this is not for me anymore. Have you ever thought of that day? Have you ever thought how is there a time do you process?
I do know it's gonna happen, and I do think of it sometimes, but usually I approach it with denial. So if you ask my very honest thought process, I'll be like, some days I'll sit to myself and I wonder what should I do when I retire? And then maybe after 5 seconds I'll be like, you know what? That's future Xiong's sport. But on a more concrete side, jokes aside, I do see myself coaching. So before last year, I've been freelance. My coaching is mostly like a part-time thing to keep pocket money while I was in school. But for almost a year now, I've been a full-time coach, and I would say I truly enjoy being a full-time coach. And I think to me, it doesn't even feel like employment. So I could definitely see myself getting focusing my efforts more into coaching. And as well as besides that, maybe finally putting my parents' money to good use and actually using what I learned from the degree. Maybe furthering my studies. I like apart from the sport of MMA itself, right? I think one of my main interests is basically how do I put it? the peak capabilities of physical performance as for humans. So I would definitely consider diving into more exercise performance like strength and conditioning, uh, uh, um, or even nutrition. Things that make the body perform better. Yeah, I think that would be another avenue that I would be willing to pursue, and that does not have as strict a timeline as professional fighting does.
What would be considered a good coach then?
Mm, that's a good question because most people think that a good coach is somebody who is
Yelling at you.
yelling at you or being super strict. But for a competitive scene, right? Like people always think, oh, this guy is he's a great athlete. He's won like 10,000 world medals, or he has brought up like a huge gym of fighters. But actually, the truth is, it's very simple. A good coach is just somebody who cares for you. So, because if they care for you on a personal level, with respect, like personal in the sense like your individual progression, rather than like the gym as a whole, then they will be able to see the things that you need specifically, not not just like not like a cookie cutter process to let everybody go through. Because if somebody cares for you individually and they're able to identify your mistakes, your strengths, your weak points, right, then they can cater the way they coach or their instructions and whatever they want to teach or show you specifically to what will make you the best version of you.
But here is this thing where you talk about good coaches. I've always struggled with this because not in the sense of like combat sports, but in the sense of like doing business. And so you have to strike a balance between getting business in and to train and to do your passions, right? Even if you open up a gym, you are getting, and you are the head coach, you are the gym owner, right?
Actually, I'm not the gym owner.
No, yeah, but as a hypothetical sense, right? If you are the gym owner, right, and you are the head coach for that place as well, you either have to bring in you have to one strike a balance into bringing customers, bring gym memberships, selling gym memberships, and then after that you also have to go along the lines that you have to train your fighters as well. So I think it's harder if you are a gym owner and a head coach together as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. So
rental in Singapore is
it's
ridiculous. Yeah, it's so hard to stay afloat.
Yeah. So I'm like, how does one to be able to do that in both? Because I know, because you just now said that your current coach is a gym owner as well. So did you ever try to approach these kind of questions to your
Not directly, but I think in a sense I'm part of the process of trying to help the gym operate. I think one of the most important things for that is to, how do I put it, stay true to how you approach your, so in the context of martial arts, I would say stay true to how you want to run your business. In the context of martial arts, will be how you want to coach, because if you were to kind of change tones for newer people just to kind of give them preferential treatment, then the older students will feel neglected, and eventually that also constitutes a loss of business, right? So I think the a good way would be to develop the culture that you want to see, and then if people are a good fit, they'll come in, they'll like the atmosphere and your whole approach to things, and then naturally they will choose to stay.
What is a I'd like to ask a little bit about the history of MMA side of things
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to Singapore, because I know that you have like because Juggernaut is like the classic.
One of the longest.
It's one of the longest, and you have I know Fight G is another one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other gyms?
I would guess you could say Impact and Evolve, if I'm not wrong. Those are quite a few like OGs. OGs,
Like, do you know the history behind the history behind the gyms? Do you know the history of like the MMA? Like, is there like a broad MMA story behind? Because I'm because I know there's no amateur MMA. Like, there's
actually, there is amateur MMA fights in Singapore. So I came up doing amateur MMA actually.
Okay.
There used to be more competitions, but recently I'm not sure if you heard of Lion City Championship. So they are the kind of grassroots organizations that host amateur MMA competitions for people to try and pursue their MMA interests, and I feel like there used to be more of those around when I was starting out, in Singapore at least. But actually, one of the how do I put it? Yeah, if we're talking about history of MMA, right? Almost a rite of passage for people that are keen in competing in amateur MMA for Singaporeans is to actually go to JB and compete in this competition called Ultimate Beatdown. So that has been around for the longest time, and almost everybody goes there to compete, regardless of the gyms and stuff there. So I think that would be one of the if you came up doing MMA in the past 5 to 10 years, I think you would have either fought there or have some sort of memories about this competition. In fact, I just went there 2 weeks ago because one of my teammates competed.
Okay. Why is it like that now? Like is there a stark difference between 5 to 10 years when you first went there to and now? Or can you just describe why is it like that? This is the first time I hear of. Okay, I've heard of Ultimate Beatdown, but this is the first time where I know someone goes in there.
Because it's so difficult. I think one of the main things is it's so difficult to run and host shows in Singapore because of all the other factors like say licensing or like being able to pay the rent for the venue that you booked up. But I suppose it's a lot cheaper in Malaysia, and they are also super OG because only until recently, I'm not sure, maybe before COVID or something, they used to put the cage at the top of a car park. So it's inside a car park, they lay out like those red kopitiam chairs, and then everybody just sits around and watches it. So it's a very unique experience. I would say you feel like you're part of a movie when you go and compete.
Shit. It feels like wrestling, but when you first started, there's like
a bit like, have you heard of like Never Back Down, the MMA show? It's kind of like that. It's fighting in like places you wouldn't expect it. Like it's not the glamorous side of it.
Man, it feels like I'm gonna reference like how I reference it. It feels like a underground. It feels like an underground match of a prison movie,
Exactly.
Oh my god, that's
someone as like Singaporeans, you go over there, then it's not even your own country. You're like, this one like hostile territory.
but how's the vibe there?
It's actually
like, can you sit in your opponent's fan?
Probably. But also, it's not as much of a spectacle because there's so many matches going on that people usually just go there to watch their friends, and once their friends finish, then it just almost like a Ju Jitsu competition, where it's like a whole day affair.
How they classify their matches then? Are there like special rules, or are there is it standard rules for everyone?
So actually I think it starts with boxing and then kickboxing, and then it ends the night with MMA. So amateur MMA, the rule set is slightly different from professional. You can't throw elbows, you can't knee people in the head. There are certain like footlocks you can't do, and so it's like a safer variation of MMA rule sets, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Would you which one is a, because I know different professional MMA got different rules. You have the UFC,
Oh, okay.
you have the ONE FC,
Mm-hmm.
you have, and you yourself joined Brave, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What are the different?
The differences in the rule
Yeah,
set.
the differences.
So the largest differences is whether you're able to knee a grounded opponent in the head, and actually it makes a huge difference because, like for example, in the UFC and the Brave rule set, I believe it's called the unified rule set. So you can't knee somebody a grounded opponent, which is basically somebody who is not standing. To get more technical, it is, I think, if they have 3 points of contact with the floor, you can't knee them in the head, but it makes a huge difference because then people exploit the rule sets. Like if somebody shoots for a takedown and they drop to their knees, they just like kind of stay below and cover up. Then with you can't generate as much power with punches when somebody's in that position. But when you go to like one championship or some promotions in Japan, they use the global rule set, which which allows knees to the head. Then you see people like get destroyed because the leg is so much stronger than the hands, you know. Mm-hmm. And throwing back a bit more. So back in the day when one used to have soccer kicks as well. So that was even more different because then Ju Jitsu guys, when they opt to stay on their back, then it's a lot more dangerous because soccer kicks are like, imagine running full swing and kicking somebody's head, right? Which is actually, if you want more details into that, you can watch my coach's old fight. So he fought this Jiu Jitsu world champion from Evolve, and then he dropped him with punches, and then he just ran full on and bam, like soccer kicked him in the face. He straight away went out pro.
Here's this thing where when it comes to rule sets, right, that it really confuses the crap out of me. Sometimes it's just like how would they know like certain maneuvers are, how do they define certain maneuvers are allowed and certain maneuvers are not allowed? I know it's really imprinted on the move side because it's like how dangerous it is, right? But it's just like, okay, how would you know like certain rule sets? It's like, say, kneeing someone in the face when they're on the ground, right? Like because like different organizations have different rule sets.
So you're saying like how do they come up with the rules?
Yeah.
So actually, it's not as clear cut as it's actually very agenda based. So, for example, one of the rules, right, is in the UFC is you cannot do 12 to 6 elbows. So 12 to 6 elbows is basically when you raise your elbow and you strike it straight down like this. But the origin of the rule is actually quite silly because back then MMA rules weren't as clear cut. So they saw karate guys smashing wooden boards with this 12 to 6 elbow. So they thought, oh, that's so dangerous. We can't use that because it's so dangerous. But this is really no different from any other like strike with your elbows. So that's how that rule came about. And then for knees and kicks to a grounded opponent, right? Okay, this one I'm not so sure, but I could be wrong. I'm definitely not 100% sure about this, but I believe in the US a lot of these MMA fighters they came up doing wrestling, right? So if you have knees and kicks to the head of a grounded opponent, then it makes it harder for actually. Okay, let me scratch that. I'm not so sure, but this is the advantages I'm describing. Like that wrestlers who shoot to their knees are less likely to get hit. Are less likely to be in trouble if you can't knee or can't kick. Right? But I think some of these rules are eliminated just because it looks too brutal. If I'm not wrong,
If it looks too brutal.
Because I know when a couple of years ago, one championship, because they had like a new investor or something.
Uh,
Again, I'm kind of talking out of my ass. I'm not too sure on the details, but then they eliminated soccer kicks because they thought it was too violent or something.
uh-huh.
But I mean, it's a combat sport. Were you not expecting violence?
I think they are like, fuck, how to get rid of the legal side of things.
A little bit. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, what's to say that like everything is dangerous if you're talking about like doing damage to another human. So why is this deemed too dangerous that I cannot do it when this is perfectly fine? You know?
I think it's all that right now. It's a when we are fighting with certain rules that everyone knows. Then at least it all makes sense, right? Here is this thing. Here's another question about like you have the two biggest promoters in the world, UFC and ONE FC, and now I only know Brave FC because I did a little research on you. Why Brave FC though?
Honestly, it was just a good opportunity for me, and I got to know about Brave from my coach Major because he has some connections there, and they provided a good opportunity for me to kind of elevate myself onto a bigger platform, because they are also a global company. So I feel so we were like, yeah, this is a good test for us. So we went there, and then we tried to, and then we came back with a win, thankfully.
How big is Brave? I just want to wrap my head around in that context because again, I'm not in the MMA.
So in terms of viewership, I would say they're definitely not as big as UFC or ONE, but if I'm not wrong, they are the country that hosts. They are the promoter that hosts shows in the most number of countries in the world.
Okay.
So they go all over. I think they're from the Middle East, but they've done shows in like Korea, where I went to, Germany, Bali, and basically a lot more countries, at least 15, I believe. Yeah.
So you have Brave. So you do Brave. Like, are there? Here is this thing that I want to ask. When it comes to promotions, right? Do you, when you sign to, what is it like to sign to a promoter?
So usually, they when a big promotion tries to sign you, they will lock you into a contract, either based on number of years or number of fights. So let's say, like example of a contract could be like 5 fights in 3 years. So whichever comes first.
Okay.
But this is the tricky part with contracts, is because like some organizations, right? Even though it states 3 years, the 3 years is based on whether or not you are competing actively. So let's say I fight 2 fights, right? And then they offer me a 3rd fight and I get injured. So I say, okay, I don't want to accept the fight. So if you don't accept the fight, they have the option to freeze your contract indefinitely. So let's say 2 years, 2 fights, right? I'm maybe 1 year into the contract. If they freeze it, right, the 1 year doesn't progress. So I'm stuck in the contract until I compete for them again.
Okay.
So that's the tricky part about signing to bigger promotions.
So like that, you have to read through the clause properly, lah. Okay. Because I'm just thinking about like how athletes will sign to this contract and stuff like that. Like, what happens? So here's this follow-up question I want to ask is if you are injured like a very badly, say you get kicked and you get kicked and you hurt your and you kind of like got rid of your kneecaps, right? And it takes like 2 years, 3 years to heal, or even longer than that, right? So what happened to the contract then? Do they still hold on to the contract, or do you, or even if you're in coma? I mean, maybe not coma for that long, but
like a serious,
yeah, like a
so you are still stuck in the contract. So you are not able to compete for any other promotion.
Okay. But if you are not just competing, then it does not make sense. It makes more sense.
But I've heard horror stories. So no like organization specifically, but I've heard horror stories where like the promotion, for some reason, maybe they don't like you. So what they'll do is they offer you a ridiculous fight that you won't accept. So when you don't accept it, they freeze your contract, right? And then they don't give you another fight.
Ridiculous? What do you mean by ridiculous?
It's because if they freeze your contract and then they don't offer you a fight in the future, right? Means you are stuck in kind of a limbo because you are not competing for them, but you also have no opportunity to make money elsewhere by fighting for another promotion because you are still signed to them. So you're kind of stuck there and you can't really progress.
Okay, so here's this thing where I want to ask, like, what kind of ridiculous fight would they propose? Like have you heard of like I know there are horror stories like that, right? So what kind of like ridiculous stories?
So for example, example of a ridiculous fight would be like, let's say they give you 10 days notice to fight like a 5-time world champion, for example.
Holy
that kind of thing, yeah. So it's like they know you will say no one unless and there's no win, right? If you say no, they freeze your contract. If you say yes, then the likelihood of you winning is very low. You got 10 days notice, you need to fight some crazy monster. The likelihood is you're gonna get fucked up.
Wow. Yeah. But are there people who just fuck it, let's take a chance so the contract, right?
For sure. I'm sure there are a lot of guys like that, but that's how they end up with losing records or like not as good. And that is just on like the professional side of things, you know, like whether your record goes up or goes down. But it doesn't factor in whether you get injured in these type of fights. Because one wrong injury, right, can alter your career like drastically, you know.
I want to ask, is there like a journeyman for MMA?
Oh, there's a lot of them for sure. Yes. So but they are a little bit harder to find because they're like scattered throughout. So they won't be like any big names or so. Like some journeymen, they just like they have like very strange records, like let's say 10 wins, 15 losses, or like I've seen one before. It's damn ridiculous. It's like 0-48. So this guy is probably just like taking dives, you know, like just for people to get a win.
How important is journeyman in MMA then?
As in how important are they?
Yeah.
As a whole? That's an interesting question.
Because journeyman is considered a thing in boxing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to understand the concept of journeyman in MMA as well.
So I think the difference is journeyman in MMA, right, you cannot make a career out of it. Because if you're a journeyman who is not signed to a big promotion, right, then you earn peanuts. Because smaller promotions, they can pay as little as like 100 per fight. So if you're a journeyman earning like $100 a fight, then it's very difficult to live off.
But that's the concept of you as a prospect fighter, right? But if you're a journeyman, you would take like 20 fights in say 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
I suppose so, but then even then the amount you earn from each fight, right, is still I feel like it's nowhere enough to sustain you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm just trying to understand like the whole idea of like journeyman in, again, trying to understand, right? And like you look at, are they really taking a dive or are they like, and that you can't have, and looking at everyone who's just trying to get like the zero lose record, which is, how would you do that? Like that means that you are always fighting people that's worse than you are.
I think it's more of like right fights at the right time. So, even though like everybody wants to be that guy who's like, I'll take any fights anytime, anywhere. Actually, like from a career perspective, it's quite dumb, right? Because if let's say like if you start at 0-0, you want to maybe fight a lesser opponent like a journeyman, like you mentioned, so that you at least you build confidence and you have a safe winning record, you know.
Yeah.
But at some point, also, it's not just about winning. When you are I feel like when you're on the verge of getting to a big promotion, you need some quality wins to get you to the next step, to get you noticed. You know? So I suppose that's the difference. Yeah.
Because I'm like, is it more like if I know MMA still doesn't have that problem as of yet, in a sense where looking at zero losses fight. But looking at boxing, right? Again, coming from a boxing perspective, because that's the only perspective I have, where you have like a zero losses fight, which is very common now. You have
a lot of undefeated fighters.
a lot of undefeated fighters. Like, why are we watching? Like, there's this part of me just go like, why am I watching this? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I know you have you, if you don't, or at least I have a harder time rooting for you because you have not failed until you have not failed, and when you did not fail, you are like there's no storyline to follow through, right?
Because sometimes you like, it doesn't make sense to watch them because you know it's going to be a win, right? But it's more of the long term plan, so that when you rack up a certain amount of wins and then you get the big money fights, I think that's where it gets exciting. So it's really like a long term investment more than in the moment.
Because I'm like, because if I see Floyd Mayweather, I'm gonna bring boxing. Like this is, if I were to get that, if I watch Floyd Mayweather, I'm like, man, I don't find him. I don't like his fight at all because he did not lose at all.
Oh really?
Like there's no root for, like, I would root for Mayweather more than Floyd.
Sorry?
Is that I'll root for Pacquiao more than Floyd. I'm so sorry. I'll root for Pacquiao than Mayweather. So it's like, because I know that Pacquiao got. I'm not dismissing Mayweather, but it's just like, okay, look, Pacquiao seems like now, if Pacquiao, if he were to go back and fight again, or like to see him lose and win, and like there's a certain root,
like the emotional
emotional roller coaster story of it. So it's like, do you? So this is where I'm gonna ask in terms of like MMA, when it comes to like, would you? What happens if that is like undefeated, or I mean, like you may get undefeated once in a while, like that's good, right? But would you want to watch a guy who has like maybe something, maybe like 33 or 43 losses, or would you want to watch like 50 wins and undefeated? Like that's.
I think it depends on how they win, right? If he's the type of, if the undefeated fighter is somebody who just plays it safe and then just like outpoints his opponent, then definitely not. But imagine if it was a undefeated fighter who has like 50 knockouts. You always want to see something exciting like that. You know? So it's very, very fighter dependent. But in terms of a whole storyline, right, there's different ways that you can approach it, as in that he could be exciting. So for example, you might always tune in to him just to see, oh, maybe this is the time he loses. You know, or maybe like, oh, this guy is on the path to becoming like the best ever. So that's where you get fans as well. So it's really, I suppose it's really the kind of storyline that you like to see, and it's very like individual dependent, I suppose.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right. Okay. I don't think I have any more questions. It's a very nice chat. Do you have anything to add?
Not specifically. But yeah, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for doing this. I really enjoyed talking to you. Yeah.